Now they're out continuing to press through, continuing to make slow progress, but they are making progress. Leaving our machine guns, we spread out in an infantry-style formation to comb the area. Our search for snipers was fruitless, but we did find a dead enemy soldier in a clump of bushes. The smell, rotting his corpse, almost made me puke. The stench could gag a maggot, Steve said. Bloated, the body was a spider trap. And almost unrecognizable as having been a human being. His uniform was charred, so I thought that he might have been hit by a flamethrower. Bloating had caused the tunic buttons of the cadaver's uniform to pop off. There was no skin on what had been the face, but the putrid flesh had scabbed over. Swarms of flies were attacking the torso, and maggots were wiggling in the eyes. I guess we were lucky Iwo had no buzzards. A rifle lay beside the body. No one touched it. It might be booby trap. Don't screw with it. Later, resting in our reserve area, I looked at my watch, saw it was 3:30 p.m., and decided to eat a K-ration. Seeing the body of dead Japs had become so commonplace, I could erase this one from my thoughts. It had nothing to do with me. I had become as hardened to death as an undertaker. Moving on. Pausing to consolidate, the men were hit with grenades, mortars, and machine gun fire from their exposed flanks and rear. And this is taking place as they're performing an assault on a hill. Cleverly, the Japanese had sprung a trap. Mortar fire from behind 362 Alpha. That's the name of the hill. Caves in front of the cliff opened up, and Alpha Company's first platoon was the hardest hit, incurring heavy casualties. At 1:30 p.m., the Alpha Company had to pull back as quickly as the hail of machine gun fire and bullets would allow. More men were lost trying to save the wounded. The work that had gone into arming and fortifying Hill 362 Alpha, the Japanese version of the Maginot Line in France, was awesome, and it was serving its designer's purpose. It was stopping the Marines. The trap sprang shut, and we were in it. Japanese mortars winged in, greeting our attack. We took cover. Machine guns and rifle fire erupted from every crack and crevice in Hill 362 Alpha. The mountain was spewing death and destruction from every fissure in its volcanic hide. There was no way to fight back. We couldn't see our enemy. But they could see us, and they had us dead in their sights. We scrambled over the rocky terrain without cover. Steve and Van carried our machine gun, followed by Pops Whitcomb and Lloyd Hurd, our ammo bearers. An orchestra of Marine and Jap mortars, machine guns, rifles, and artillery created a roaring, shrieking clamor, inducing terror throughout the ranks, stopping our forward momentum. With mounting casualties and nightfall approaching, we consolidated our positions and dug in. We were literally nose to nose with our mortal enemies. Some of the enemy positions were less than 40 feet in front of us. The day's fight had cost the battalion an estimated 100 casualties for a gain of 200 yards. A typical day's fighting on Iwo. Going forward, continuing to push. Back to the book. Mortar, machine gun, and targeted rifle fire torn to the company. Men started dropping on all sides. Dirt ripped at my eyes, and the clamor of explosions and bullets pounded against my ears. The ridge we faced was alive with an enemy that was impossible to see or kill. Captain Manshine crept forward. He could see the chaos and disorder of our situation. Standing up with a cool, purposeful manner, he took charge. He looked as calm as though he were directing a training maneuver at Camp Pendleton. Reorganizing the company, he directed a withdrawal from our untenable position. He seemed to be everywhere at the proper moment, personally assisting wounded, making sure everyone got out of the Japs' trap. Captain Jimmy Mayenshine never ran out of courage, and his selfless, heroic actions saved Bravo Company from destruction. But he did run out of luck. He was the last man still in the trap. When he attempted to withdraw towards our line, Japanese soldiers used him for target practice, riddling his chest with multiple bullet wounds, killing him. Reacting to the loss of our favorite officer, the company found a collective fury and determination. Reorganized, we rushed to the offensive. Because we were too close for artillery fire support or airstrikes, the fight developed as a classic Marine infantry attack. Small clusters of men advanced by fire and fast movement until they found and obliterated each concealed strongpoint or individual enemy soldier. Van's gun suddenly stopped. Looking their way, I saw that he and Steve were down. Suddenly I was overwhelmed with rage, and all the anger I had stored up against the Japanese burst out. Without thought or hesitation, I sprinted into Van's position. Van had been hit in the back, near the right shoulder, and the round had exited his left side. Steve had been gut shot twice and was white with shock. By reflex, he was holding his hands to his stomach to stem the bleeding. Blood poured out around his fingers. As he pulled his legs into the fetal position, I could see the pain on his pinched face. Knowing that the Japs would shoot Steve and Van as they rolled around on the ground, I grabbed their machine gun into my arms and fired from the hip, like Basilone did, sending lead into the cave to suppress enemy fire. I was in a hot rage and swiveled the gun about so its bullets would ricochet throughout the cave and decimate those bastards who shot my friends. Clouds of rock dust billowed from the cave's mouth. I poured fire into the cave's black mouth until the belt ran out. For a second, I stood there, the .30 cal's barrel smoking. The Japs who had shot Steve and Van were silent. Nothing came from the cave. No bonsai charges, no moans, nothing. Just smoke and dust. My senses returned. Dropping the gun, I turned to Steve and Van. I knew they were dying. I screamed, "Corpsmen!" With the cave suppressed and the area safe, Doc Marsh ran to Steve and knelt over him, then turned to Van. Seconds ticked past, seeming like hours. I waited for Doc's orders. Hurd ran out to join us and help me and Marsh drag Van and Steve to cover. Marsh injected Van with morphine while I broke open Steve's first aid kit and handed the syringe to Marsh. He shoved the needle into Steve's flesh. I screamed, "Stretcher bearers!" This day of violence, fear, killing, and maiming left me on the edge of despair. Sergeant Wendell talked to me in a personal and Marine way. "Tatum," he said, "let's go. We've got a job to do." My mind slipped into a protective mode when events beyond my control took over. From that afternoon on, I purposely tried to avoid getting to know the replacement ammo humpers and the Marines filling the slots of those we had lost. I didn't want to know their names, where they were from, or to see their girlfriends' pictures. I didn't want to get attached to them and suffer through the loss of close friends again. The war was still going on 30 feet ahead. I wanted revenge.